Welcome, and welcome, and welcome, and welcome to Clever Orbits. I am one of your hosts, Louis Brantmeyer, and with me are
Richard Futrell
and Tyler Brantmeyer.
And tonight we are discussing Episode 2, Season 5 of Star Trek Voyager, entitled Drone. Opening thoughts or opening salvo, anybody?
I liked it.
I loved it.
Yeah? I thought it was another solid Voyager Borg episode. Like, they consistently deliver on delivering at least a little sliver of something interesting about the Borg on the Voyager.
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, like, it makes up for the loss of menace and fearsomeness in the Borg by adding subtlety, distinction, and intricacy to the race. So
the loss of menace is pretty real.
What's that?
The loss of menace is pretty real. You know, at this point in the episode, there's even a part where they're making fun of the Borg. The Borg, party poopers of the galaxy. That's what they've become.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, also Balana's comment about, actually, I got to quote it specifically. Maybe this is the collective's new strategy. They don't assimilate anymore. They just show up and look helpless.
Yeah, Janeway's a sucker for that.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Balana, actually, throughout this episode. She's just so unnecessarily mean and aggressive.
Yeah, I thought she was pretty reasonable.
When Neelix says, "Oh, well, we're just, we're going to make him part of the family," she said, "How Starfleet of you!" And it's just like, aren't you? But you've for 5 years been serving on a Starfleet ship. So anyway,
the Maquis, did they rebel against Starfleet because Starfleet was too friendly?
I mean, not too friendly, but just like the kind
I think it's because they were not friendly enough.
Not friendly enough to leave people alone.
Yeah,
does anyone remember Eddington's monologue on DS9?
No. I remember that I watched it and I thought it was cool, but I don't remember any of the content. I guess that says something.
The Maquis guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The traitor.
Yeah, the traitor. The traitor's
uniform.
Yeah,
you know what I'm realizing, this is not related to this episode, but it's definitely related to Voyager, is that they didn't really make the Maquis weren't really interesting enough for an extended show of Starfleet versus the Maquis to be something that would be that interesting. Like, it was very well done on Voyager on DS9, the interactions with the Maquis and the subtlety of stuff that was going on between the Federation and the Maquis and even the Cardassians. I just watched this one where they put O'Brien on trial and the Maquis are kind of used as a plot element, and or the Cardassians put O'Brien on trial. But yeah, I mean, you'd have maybe a season of conflict, and they kind of did in season 1 of Voyager, and then maybe you'd have some kind of open hostilities like they did in that worst case scenario episode, which was actually really good. I mean, it would have been much better if it had actually happened, a Maquis mutiny. Yeah, I'm just realizing, they integrated pretty well. I mean, what else are they really going to do? There's no Maquis ship left. It was destroyed. And, yeah, I guess the writers kind of set themselves up for something that wasn't very interesting, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the classic could-have-beens in television history, the fact that the whole Maquis plotline just didn't go anywhere at all.
Yeah. Well, anyway, back to Drone. I liked Seven smiling at the very beginning, and I liked the counterpoint with her. So she was sort of trying to fake happiness at the beginning, and then at the end she had real sadness, which seems like something you would really enjoy, Richard, somebody making that transition.
Well, one thing I liked was there's very good or very interesting cinematography in this episode. So we start off seeing 7 of 9 in a reflection. We end with seeing her in a reflection. And there's also that interesting shot when the Borg drone is just an infant where you see him inside the tank and it's looking outward and there's this green screen and you can hear muffled voices talking about transporter coils and stuff. So
you can kind of barely hear them.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to understand what they were saying, so maybe it was a little bit too experimental there. But I liked that they've taken some risks in the cinematography.
Yeah, I didn't notice all of the cinematography, but you're totally right. There was subtlety in the recording sort of process and what they captured on film. And actually, this is I felt like this episode was not necessarily populated by a full-on male gaze, but if you're looking for it and if you're paying attention to it, you get a lot of really great shots of 7 of 9's butt.
It's really true that the series, uses that.
And, I have to admit, I only was really noticing that because I've seen this episode like half a dozen times already, so I was actively looking for things to keep me interested. I mean, I managed to find a lot and a lot more that are more valuable than 7 of 9's behind, but it was something that once I noticed, like, the first scene, I was like, oh, wow, she's in this episode a lot. There's a chance to see a lot of that. This is what happens when you're on a 90-day fast from sex. You start noticing it everywhere, like food. But, so on the other hand, in defense of feminism on this show, not to say what I said wasn't feminist, it's just, it's what would occur for any natural warm-blooded male, probably. The way that everybody treats her while she's wearing the suit is actually really great. It's really egalitarian and politically correct and, like, generous and supportive, and nobody's really, except for maybe Harry a couple times.
Yeah, I was going to say Harry's a little bit awkward
not very professional generally.
No, he's really creating a hostile work environment.
No, I think he is the hostile work environment.
Yeah, Captain Kim.
You shall call me Captain Kim.
We're going to read about him in the paper or a blog.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about Janeway's decision to keep the Borg, even though he's very dangerous, rather than getting rid of him?
Oh, it's classic, compassionate, intelligent, heartfelt Janeway. Like she was doing the right thing as far as Starfleet is concerned, and as far as like the individual life of that being is concerned. And I like that she did that. I like how it happened. I mean, of course, the ending was really sad, but this new being deserves the chance to develop in a way that is according to its own will and intention. Now, would she have allowed the drone to go join the collective if that had been his ultimate choice? No, I don't think so. I think she would have had him terminated if that were possible after he had the chance to choose that, which he didn't have the ability to choose that at the beginning or not choose it. So, I mean, part of I think this is kind of, I'm not sure if I remember exactly, but I think she said something like that to 7, like, hey, once you've gotten your humanity back, if you choose to rejoin the Borg, like, then you can. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
She said something like that.
Yeah, when she reasserted her own free will, and she had it, and she was exercising it. Yeah.
And even more for the feminism of this episode, the Bechdel test is passed, right? I mean, it's only incidental that the drone is male. I mean, they're talking about a man, but more that he's like a developing person, crew member. So there's that. Okay, I'm going to let loose now. There's a lot to say. I like the shuttle. In the beginning, I've always liked that shuttle type. I like that 7 of 9 suggests that they make a better one. Yeah, it was a Class 2.
What did they call it, though?
What's that?
They call it something else because it's claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah, Class 2 claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I liked the visuals throughout the episode. It's because I've seen it like 5 or 6 times that I finally noticed, oh, wow, those Borg nanoprobes sprouting from the emitter are actually CGI. Like, That was the first time I caught it. Like, it's just so well done that, like, it took seeing it many times for me to be like, oh, yeah, that's clearly computer generated. I like how the Delta Flyer was originally 7's idea. I think I just said that, but like consider that the explanation for the coolest ship on Voyager is that 7 of 9 said, hey, we should make a shuttle that's more resilient than these. And of course, they just lost another shuttle. In case you guys are wondering.
Yeah.
I think somebody
keeping count.
Somebody, they're
certainly not
the writers. Well, there's somebody keeping count. There's this great YouTube video series called the Star Trek Imponderables, where it's just a bunch of plot holes. Like, we've only got a dozen torpedoes in season 1 of Voyager, and then 2 seasons later they fire like 12 at once. It's like, or something like that. But having one resilient shuttle does actually make up for that. One really cool hot rod of a shuttle. I don't know. Do you guys remember the Delta Flyer? I really love the Delta Flyer.
I don't remember it.
Oh, it's in the next episode.
I haven't seen all of late Voyager.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, it's pretty popular. So nanotechnology, it's pretty cool and scary, like how the emitter assimilates the room so quickly and synthesizes new technology. This is another of the many things that make the Borg cool and interesting, the nanotech. I mean, like, it's one thing that they've got this collective will and this ability to, like, incorporate people. It's another thing that they've got these small, like, micro machine devices that can change the nature of matter. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but there's like an apocalypse scenario called gray goo, where nanotech just starts making things into itself and consumes everything on the planet until it's all more nanotechnology. And I think there's a Michael Crichton novel about it. That would certainly be an interesting
direction for the Borg if they were like miniaturized. They became the mini Borg, and they tried to assimilate the universe that way.
Yeah, there's like a question about why they don't reproduce the way that they did in this episode. Like, I feel like
the way that they do in Q-Who.
Yeah, I mean, so the explanation, I think, and I go into this a little bit later in my notes, but the Borg tech was innately microprogrammed to experiment with new tech, right? Like she says, it'll make use of any tech that it encounters, and so it needed a new host to augment with its new tech. And so the Borg technology, I don't know why it didn't assimilate that guy. Like, it seems like maybe it could have just assimilated. Actually, no. My answer was that, so my questions were, why aren't the Borg an all-technological species? Like, why do they require or wish to incorporate any organic material at all? Especially when we see in Descent how they all, the drones resonate with Lore's idea of, let's just make a completely artificial species, you know?
I think one reason may be that there still are ways in which biological life is more efficient at certain kinds of functions and computations than technological life, in the same way that, you know, a bird can fly much more efficiently than any airplane. And, you know, there are probably computations the human brain can do more efficiently than a computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So actually the explanation then for why they reproduced in this way, why there was a maturation chamber, was because it couldn't, the tech wouldn't be complete without the host. And, you know, with sufficient resources, it will eventually be more efficient in the future for the Borg to reproduce in this way. Like changing their strategy generally. Because if there's more drones, it's easier for them to assimilate more people. So maybe some combination of strategies would actually make them more effective.
Well, we don't know most of what goes on a Borg cube. It might be that most of what they do is all within the technology, and the whole, you know, biological drone thing is just sort of a side project.
What do you mean? Like,
I don't know. Maybe they're spending most of their energy resources on, you know, computations and actions that are done only by machines inside the cube, and they just need the drones for certain stuff that biological material can do better.
Oh yeah, like maintenance on those machines or something.
Yeah.
So, let's see. This is probably not the best note. Seven's hair is interesting.
It is a little 90s.
It's again me with the hair. I'm noticing the hair in these episodes. Oh, yeah, actually, I do have a note where it explains why it's a more robust explanation for why they chose to reproduce this way. And it's precisely because the nanoprobes knew or reliably predicted that the likelihood of the survival of the drone itself, the host for the new tech, would be longer if it wasn't just an assimilation. Like if it was
clever.
If it was just like an assimilation, then that would have been a hostile environment for that drone. But, you know, if you produce an infant, and that infant basically... Oh, and it's also because the 29th century technology is sophisticated enough to grow a new organism from a very small amount of biological material. The Borg don't have that now, and I'm sure they would do that if they could, but they don't have that
they
now.
did in Q-Who, and then something happened.
Well, no, I think the explanation for those Borg is that those were Borg from a group that was recently assimilated, and they have maturation chambers so that the Borg can have fully formed, full-fledged adult drones that are useful. Like if you just have children that you assimilate, like, all right, well, we got to waste resources on this thing until they're grown up.
Got to send them to Borg daycare.
Or, put them in that Borg box. That poor infant, remember, in Q?
Oh, God.
He's just like...
in those little beds, like drawers.
Yeah, he's in a drawer. Anyway.
They were probably putting all kinds of great entertainment into its brain with all those implants. It was probably having a great time.
So much loud colors.
Like the Black Mirror. But I like their phaser rifles. It seems only Voyager ever got these. It's a really kind of weird variant. It doesn't really look like any other, like, Federation weapon, especially with those, like, pincer-like things on the end. It's kind of a spandrel. We kind of don't know why it's there, but it looks
yeah.
Cool.
I like that when they were firing on the Borg ship, the Borg had this way of shooting the phaser back at them somehow. And that was a cool moment where the phaser was something more than just a laser gun or whatever. It like actually seemed like there's some kind of science there, and it would be possible to reflect it in this way.
Yeah, and it was also pretty smart on the Borg's part, right? I mean, also more on this new tech host thing. I think it would be far more efficient for them to assimilate people if they had this kind of Venus flytrap thing where you walk into an area and nanoprobe things sprout and then they assimilate you if it were like independent of the biological process. But maybe we know the nanoprobes don't require an organic host to survive. So I mean it would be really hard for people to fight an infection of nanoprobes. Like we see later Phlox gets in Regeneration. He basically treats it like an infection. And if the Borg assimilated in that way, then eventually everybody would get it because nobody would initially realize what it was. And everybody would change over completely at the same time later on. And it wouldn't be so much of a like, what's going on? It would be subtler. Like they would breathe it in or it would be in the water or something. So an assimilation virus. Yeah. You can have that, any Borg drones who are listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for the all-powerful villains that they're supposed to be, it seems like the Borg, they have a lot of avenues they could have explored that they didn't.
Yeah, which is what it is. I mean,
fine.
Writers are limited. But
if they were actually living up to their potential, then it wouldn't be interesting because they would just crush the Federation immediately.
yeah, wouldn't that have been a fun show?
Oh, God. Plot twist.
Like, what if
they're
at the
actually
end of
as
the
confident as they seem?
What if what if the Best of Both Worlds Part 2 was the Borg crushing the Federation, everyone's assimilated, show's over?
Yeah, I think well, no, like that would be a really dramatic direction for any sci-fi show to go, and I think a sci-fi show should totally take this direction, where like for the first half, 2/3 of the show, it's just kind of normal. You got a crew, you're following them on adventures, and then suddenly they all get like incorporated into this alien species. And then that's it. Like, they don't get freed. You just follow the new voyages of them as Borg. Like,
yeah.
And it's mostly them, like,
Borg water cooler moments.
like drone 672, you will report to Deck 5 for maintenance exam.
Well, this is a little thing, though. So we see this little shot inside the Borg vessel in this ship, and we hear a voice saying, in the imperative, it's like, we've detected something in such and such a unimatrix, we need to go there now. If the Borg can communicate and they're perfectly coordinated, they can communicate mind to mind, who's making this announcement and who are they announcing it to?
Oh, I think the announcement was a conceit for the sake of the viewer. I don't think.
Right. The Borg were breaking the fourth wall.
I realize that. I was just giving the writers a hard time.
Oh. Yeah, well, another question about that shot is why all the empty space? Like, and also, the Borg sphere, it looks internally from those visuals, and then later on you get this from the visuals in First Contact of the Borg cube. Like, they make it look a whole lot larger than it could possibly be. I mean, like, it's not that huge because it's compared to Voyager, which is a limited number of decks. It's not like an island. It's a limited number of meters long. So anyway, but I mean, also they waste a lot of space, architecturally speaking. Seems like there's more that could be done with a lot of that interior space. And then when Janeway, is on the cube for Scorpion, there's this one walkway to cross from one side of the cube to the other, and she's on that walkway, and in the middle of the cube, it's all just like nothing. And then originally on Q-Who, there's like nothing in the middle of the cube too. So like, what's with the Borg's need for lots of empty space on their ships?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's like a transwarp thing, or I don't know. Yeah. So this was a thought that I had. I would really love to see Tuvok and Worf work together. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been done in any of the books or anything. So, but let's see. Why is Seven still recognized as Borg by Borg force fields?
Well, Picard was.
Really?
Yeah, Hugh recognized him as Locutus, remember?
Oh, well, he was recognized as Locutus, but that was like a mismatch of perception and sensory stimuli. Like with the force fields, it's got to detect a generic drone biosignature or something, which maybe she's got enough tech left in her body that's still with her. Maybe that's what
Must
it is.
be that.
Yeah.
I got a big question, though.
Yeah?
So they're sleeping pods, the Borg regeneration chambers. She says these are chambers beta and gamma, and she's in beta, and the drone is in gamma. What happened to chamber alpha? Why did they start with beta?
Clearly down for maintenance.
Did we see it break?
No, it broke off the screen.
If it was broken from the beginning, how come they didn't call the first one that was working alpha?
Alpha's for porn.
Wait, what?
I think they just thought beta sounded cooler than alpha.
No, alpha is for porn.
It's for recreation.
Yeah, speaking of porn, like I feel like there's got to be some good Voyager fan fiction out there where somebody isn't like afraid of Seven and actually tries a legitimate, like, effective means of seducing her. I mean, Harry Kim's just a bumbling idiot, so of course anything he tries is probably gonna fail. And like you see early on in season 4, he's like attracted to her and skittish around her, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to mate?" Because she just like cuts through it. She's just like, "All right, the mating shall commence," and he's just like confused and scared, and, like, walks away. But I feel like probably somebody should have, I mean, it just seems natural, like for that to have happened at some point. But then again, later on she's playing with the Chakotay hologram and learning how to date and social niceties, and it does stand to reason that all sexual desire would be programmed out of Borg drones. I mean, like, just like they don't have the desire for pleasure or pain or avoidance of pain, like to sex is part of that. So it seems like the Borg would of necessity be asexual, since of course it's mainly for reproduction, right? And they don't need it to reproduce. They reproduce through assimilation. So
yeah, I think it's only a very far-fetched scenario where the Borg would need to have any sexual drive.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the Borg, part of why they exist might be because some scientist was trying to use technology to augment organic beings so that they didn't need to resort to the sexual drive,
Could be.
Yeah. I love Janeway's sympathy for the Borg, like just in general, how she's and that's the classic kind of Trekkian thing about this episode, and why I think it's beautiful and give it a 10 out of 10 is it's like about having compassion for the innocents among those enemies who we generally can't abide and mostly don't understand, how they have, like basic dignity and rights, even if we disagree with their actions and their aims. And also, it's about growth through nurturing another and accepting and tolerating that which is different than ourselves. So, I mean, that's kind of the core. It's very similar to what you got with the tardigrade in Discovery. Like you experience compassion and empathy for this thing that initially doesn't make any sense and it's kind of scary, and
it's not only kind of scary, but legitimately dangerous.
Yeah. In both cases, the Borg.
It's not like people's fear is misplaced. Like, there's a real chance that this will go south in a very bad way.
Yeah, which makes it all the more, like, rewarding that someone should choose to be compassionate, like, in the face of that. So
yeah, I appreciate that, and I respect it. I feel like Voyager is the story of Janeway consistently making these decisions according to the strong ethical code, and it seems like they're very dangerous. It seems like it shouldn't work, and it still works out in the end anyway. I'd like to see a bit more of cases where, that causes long-term trouble and disasters, because in real life, taking risks does lead to disasters sometimes.
Yeah, she's not blameless. I mean, it's, I guess, ultimately philosophically questionable whether or not the temporal prime directive is something that we should adhere to, like, or whether it's meaningful even to talk about, really. And she doesn't, like, adhere to that. She sacrifices, like, the destiny of billions of lives for the sake of her crew getting home. And then also there's the episode with Tuvix where she kills a guy. But
yeah, I mean, sometimes she just strays from her code, but I feel like I'd like to see more instances where she follows her code and that leads to disaster. And then how does she deal with that?
Yeah, that's usually how they make it interesting ethically. It's like, all right, well, being self-consistent means you face these consequences. And incidentally, for the case of Tuvix, I think she probably saw it as saving Tuvok and saving Neelix.
Killing one to save two, classic trolley problem.
Yeah, we should have a trolley problem podcast with Steve at some point, because he's discovered this whole world of memes on the internet that are just hilarious and insane, obsessed with that. But yeah, I thought that the scene at the end was absolutely heart-wrenching, how he sacrifices himself, and the mixture of, like, nihilism and self-sacrifice that he had was kind of sad. I mean, I guess, maybe it was true that he had tactically assessed that him being around any longer was a greater threat to those he cared about than him, not being around. Okay, that's noble, I guess. But, like, I don't know, he kind of killed himself, and I didn't like that. The actor was brilliant.
Yeah, they got a good guy for that.
Perfect choice.
He's good at being flat affect at first and then opening up.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how, so two or three things about the 29th century tech in this episode. It seems like the nanoprobes would be a great way to learn more of what's possible about the 29th century. Like, it's funny that they never really followed that out later on, because clearly the mobile emitter gets removed from the drone, gets returned to the doctor, and the doctor uses it again. But now that they know that nanoprobes can access information, complex information about 29th century tech, it seems like somebody should investigate that. But then again, there's the temporal prime directive, and maybe the existence of the emitter is already such a violation that they don't want to exacerbate it. And but on the other hand, why didn't DTI go back and retrieve it, right? Maybe they should have, like, stopped the emitter from being on Voyager, but maybe they didn't know about it, or maybe by the time they learned about it through future records, it was so. Or actually, okay, so the DTI is in the present. Starfleet Temporal Investigations, or the Federation Temporal Agency, is in the 31st century, and so when they find out about the emitter, makes it. Am I making any sense? You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there's
DTI.
Go ahead.
I don't think that would show up in future novels, I think. They never incorporated that as part of any narrative that Voyager was exploring.
Yeah. The what do you call it? The emitter, the way that it gets incorporated into the drone for life functionings and not necessarily for higher reasoning. This tells us some stuff about how the Borg integrate technology, I think, because that tech utilized, first of all, to preserve the organic matter. It could have been used for higher reasoning or complex calculations in the neocortex, but no, it's probably used as part of the midbrain or the brain stem or something, regulating autonomic functions. So, like, the tech, and this actually tells us something really interesting about the Borg in general. Their tech is primarily to augment organic matter. So organic matter is primary, then the tech is there to augment the original being, the organic being. And I think that provides us with a clue about the origins of the Borg as well. But, it's not something new. It's just reinforcement for that idea,
Yeah. I mean, in the same way that most of our brains are dedicated to just body management stuff.
Really? Would you say most of our brains are?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Oh, you're right. Totally. Everything from the brainstem up through the limbic system is dedicated to body and management. Yeah. So there's this massive data storage capacity that we noted in the last episode. It's delineated by the data node deliveries, so it's kind of reinforced, and he knows a lot. The new drone scenes, no, actually, let me not skip that. The neural interface thing, it's basically a Borg mind meld.
Yeah.
It's
the Borg are basically mind melding with all the other Borg all the time.
Yeah. So, let's see what I was going to say. The new drone scenes, right? And I caught this even though I didn't resonate with it when I was watching it this time. The scenes where the drone is new and you don't know what's going to happen with him, and you think maybe that he's going to be hostile, those were well done. Those were kind of scary.
They're quite tense.
He may attack us and assimilate us all and overpower us all very quickly. You're very tense. You're right. It's the central point of tension for the whole episode. You get some stuff with the Borg sphere later on, but that's not. I guess there was never a time when I ever don't remember really not having seen this episode. So I'm sure the first time that I saw it, it was scary. Are the Borg going to do something to us? But yeah. So anyway, something interesting that came out of my thought about the moment the Borg begins to process that information, the very first data node, was the Borg are kind of like our will to know, unrestrained by traditional ethics. Maybe learning through assimilation is actually more efficient than investigation most of the time. One is pretty much hungry for knowledge, and the Borg understand everything, and what they don't assimilate and make rationalized is something that's missing, something that they really want to conquer. And so actually you can imagine individuals piecemeal gathering data and peer reviewing it compared to instantaneous auto-correction by a world, a massive supercomputer of Borg scholars. Just think how much more empowered science would be. We wouldn't have to go through this terrible, annoying process of all right, somebody's got to be aware of all the literature. Somebody's got to compare all the literature with all the current research. Somebody's got to do more research. Somebody's got to peer review that research and then reproduce that research. No, you can instantly reproduce it in the collective by someone who's maybe that's a lot of what's going on behind the scenes on these ships. The cross referencing, the organization, the reproduction, the validation of knowledge and conclusions about the nature of reality. And surely they have more information because they've been to other dimensions. And so, the Borg, philosophically speaking and scientifically speaking, might be more advanced than the entire Federation and most of the species of the Star Trek universe. That's my assumption.
I think certainly so.
What do you think,
Tyler? I see them as the projection of,
I agree. What do you see them as a projection of, Richard? I
see them as a projection of something like the Federation into the far future, plus something went awry somewhere with the mission statement.
just the mission statement? Makes it sound like a company that doesn't have the right mission statement. So what are our core values, our core competencies? Our mission statement, I just imagine a business meeting. Our mission statement, somebody comes to the meeting, their mission statement's supposed to be something provide grape juice to the whole world. And somebody walks into the meeting with assimilate everyone. Something went wrong with that mission statement.
I can see that on the list.
I'm sure it was
I can see that meeting happening, right? It's funny.
I'm sure it wasn't let's go from selling grape juice to assimilate everyone. It was a series of small changes, and no one really noticed it was getting kind of creepy It's like the frog boiling.
Yeah, sort of like dark, like Black Mirror, right? Like what makes that show so creepy is it's just a couple half steps ahead of where we're at in very terrifying directions, and the terror is usually almost like subtle. It's like an adaptation of technology that we already have in a slight direction that you kind of would expect, but with consequences that are so dehumanizing, alienating, terrifying, and horrific that you're like, whoa, we're on the edge of that? Oh, that's not good. Which, in any case, that was my my recommendation for Black Mirror. They've got the new season coming at the end of the month.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you'd love it, Richard. It's all really sad.
I've seen the first 2 seasons, and the third season is just so depressing. I can't sit down and think, like, now I want this to happen to my day.
Damn.
Yeah, Tyler.
If Richard's saying that.
Yeah, if Richard's saying that, I know.
It's very depressing.
Something's dark for Richard. Whoa.
I agree.
But Tyler and I watched the episode with, what was that face, Tyler? The face, the troll face on the internet, what's that called?
You basically just said it.
Troll face. So so the episode basically ends with a troll face, and it was that episode from the third season, and I remember being really excited, like, Tyler, we're gonna watch something together over the phone. We're gonna listen to it, or no, we're gonna watch it, and then we're gonna check in right afterwards and discuss it, and it'll be exciting and a bonding experience. And then it was like, it made me so profoundly sad and disaffected and disquieted. I was just like, I'm so sorry, Tyler. Like, Tyler, I remember like calling you up weeping because of like how bleak and I felt like I was like asking anyone to watch that episode was unethical. Because the net sadness and depression of that episode is higher than any benefit you can gain. And I felt that a lot from various episodes of Black Mirror. I mean, like, it's effective for what it is, really. Like being an efficient delivery system for depression via meditations, philosophical, social, and otherwise on technology and how it could evolve. Which means we should probably, see, having just said that, I'm not sure that I want to do Black Mirror with Clever Orbit, but
I don't want to.
yeah, that's good. So anyway, back to Drone. I think the trinkets in Janeway's ready room, did you guys notice those? Those were kind of interesting.
No, are they?
They're behind her when she's talking to Seven about making sure the drone becomes like an individual. And it's kind of, I mean, they're just there. You know, there's nothing terribly interesting about them. I just noticed them. And it's a hallmark of Captain's ready rooms, you know, to have a fish or whatever. But let's see. I thought this was funny. It's a very minor way of causing harm to red shirts. Like, instead of having red shirts die in this episode, which of course in the Next Generation era they're, you know, orange or yellow colored because of the color change. But instead of having the red shirts die, these just get assigned to really boring duty, like watching a drone.
To make them slowly die inside.
Yeah, something like that.
On the original series, they die in firefights on planets. On Voyager, they die slowly inside while performing science experiments.
or just like doing really annoyingly boring things. I like how the drone changes from menacing adversary to precocious child in about 30 seconds flat. That was awesome. Like, that was one of those moments that make this one of the best episodes of Star Trek. Is just like, you go from, I mean they've done the humanizing of the Borg through 7 of 9 really well by this point. I mean, they've given her a year, and you see her backstory with Raven that we watched, and then her feelings on being taken from the collective. But the dramatized visual transformation of someone on the screen from menacing Borg drone to something we not only empathize with but care for and want to nurture and take care of, like, in 30 seconds. Like, that was my experience. And 7 of 9 also, you see her really rare, really interesting, especially in the context of her character, get maternal. I think this is the only time on the series when that instinct ever gets expressed for her, which, of course, for the Borg must have been bred out. The paternal and the maternal instincts for any species that sexually reproduces must have been kind of unused neural architecture in the brains of the Borg, or it must have been turned off. And we find out later on in Voyager there's a specific, cranial clamp, bi-radial clamp or something in her brain that prevents her from having too strong a feeling or, desire or whatever. So, that's another thing, that the evisceration and the annihilation and control of individual expression, biological, cultural, and personal, that's something that must have evolved over time with the Borg, and it's something that she overcomes here really beautifully. I mean, you see her kind of proud when he starts to serve the crew, because, as she says, Voyager is my collective. And, it's interesting because he ends up being caught in the right stage of his development to be perfectly coachable, like how easily he fits into the crew, and how, Seven helps him. Well, okay, I mean, it isn't all him. I mean, of course, it is Seven, and she's a better coach for a Borg becoming a human than anybody dealing with her was, because she sees all the pitfalls and is able to help him leapfrog over those impasses. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. What did you guys think about that aspect of it? Hello?
Well, I thought that...
oh, okay, great. I was like,
in addition to the... I thought that one didn't just immediately go from being threatening to being like a precocious child. He was still a little threatening. Like, when he was asking for more information, he would, grab people's arms. It seemed to me, not having seen the episode, that one way this might go would be that he starts violently attacking people for information because he just doesn't know the boundaries.
Oh, what could have happened without their guidance? He does tell the doctor, I want you to tell my story now.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, even at that, you're right. Even at that point in the development, he was kind of scary, and there's a chance that he could have been really bad. So, yeah, I think he was still menacing. I mean, he was menacing enough for them to have guards on him right up until the last scene. There's one guard with him for a little while when he goes to the Sard collectors. And then at the end, the same guards who are guarding him in Astrometrics, which, by the way, is my favorite set on all of Voyager. Astrometrics is just so beautiful. They do so many cool things there. And I like that it's Seven's domain. But anyway, those two guards, it looks like they kind of just forget what they're doing. The Borg just walks right past them, and it's with Seven. Or maybe they, had something better and more important to do. Maybe...
think?
I don't think they were thinking.
Think about 7 of 9?
I mean, maybe they were just checking her out the whole time. Yeah. I don't think that would have happened, though. I think everybody on that crew, except for Harry Kim, is a professional. And that's going to be my joke whenever we get back to Voyager, is that Harry Kim is just dumb. Yeah, here's a phrase we should talk about. It's kind of interesting. The lure of perfection, right? 7 of 9 says this about how strongly the lure of perfection is, and it'll draw the drone in. What did you think about that?
Well, in the light of our previous discussion, I mean, the drone, because there's clear desire for knowledge and for, connection, and, the Borg just are that.
Yeah, that fits.
And, of course, I guess she can't be saying the Borg are perfection, but they seek perfection, and they're laser and focused in on the course toward perfection, and they're not off on little side tangents like studying individuality and stuff.
Yeah, they've got that's actually a really great cultural argument in favor of the Borg, is that we divert a lot of our energy and resources to things like art, entertainment, comfort, technology that makes things more interesting for us. Whereas as a species, if we all had one unified will and perspective and objective, we might be accomplishing that one thing better than we are now.
Yep.
So maybe the Borg are actually more efficient and effective than humanity, just generally.
At what they do, they certainly are.
Well, I'm saying at whatever they do.
Yeah, I think they could be at whatever they do.
Yeah. One scene that I really loved was right near the end when they are facing off against the sphere, and the drone can hear their thoughts in his head, and he says, "Oh, I can hear them." And then 7 of 9 turns and looks out, sort of metaphorically, at the collective and says, "Yes, I can hear it too." And you get this terror creeps over the faces of Chakotay and Janeway, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe we've lost her again. Maybe actually we're not her collective, and like, we've got a problem. Like that was really well done. I really liked that.
It was a cool moment. And then 7 says, "We must resist them."
Yeah. Which I think was necessary. Like all through this process, if you hadn't had 7 of 9 to help the drone to mature and to withstand the collective and to, to give him little nuggets like Voyager is my collective. I mean, what she did there was really subtle, but it was really elegant and really worked well because she compared the Borg collective. She basically made it one culture among many. Like, hey, I get that you want to be part of a collective, and that's really an important motivator for you, one. But Voyager is a collective, too. You can be a part of us. And like, if he hadn't had that option or that frame, he might have just chosen the Borg collective,
Yep. Yeah, she does a lot of good reframing with him. A lot of good cognitive behavioral therapy.
So a couple other things, and then I really want to hear from you, Tyler. What did you like about this episode, man?
Well, I liked Mr. Bomer's efforts as one. He basically became the heart of the entire episode, shared it with Jerry Ryan. And I like the overarching narrative of how 7 is discovering human emotion, and she's forcing herself to smile, but then later on just genuinely feeling, just allowing herself to feel. The moment she looks in that mirror again at the end of the episode, and she's just allowing herself to feel and allowing herself to be overwhelmed by what she's feeling. I like the episode just for that arc. Everything else, there were a lot of funny lines. I think the Doctor got a few. Neelix got a couple of observations that I was like, like, oh, you've seen one genetically enhanced super species. You've seen them all. Okay. He's just trying to keep him from learning about the Borg. But, yeah, no, everyone had some fun moments. Everyone had lines. You get this feeling, but at this point in the show, that it's a well-oiled machine. The crew is really functioning well together. They're all basically a family, which that term's used literally throughout the run of the show. But, yeah, I liked that part of the episode, and I thought one's character was a really interesting idea to have another transporter accident, of all things. Wonderful recurring plot device, basically become a future Borg. Yeah, it was actually well used. I mean, like, here's one instance where that trope becomes really well done because of the new spin on it. Yeah, utilize future technology. I thought that was pretty interesting. I figured that technology is untapped. It basically all it's really being used for right now is so the Doctor can leave the sick bay. What are its other applications? What other uses could it be for? What could happen to it if it's utilized by someone else? Which I think at that point, there were a couple of times in the series where that happened, but this seemed like the most interesting. Yeah, it touches on a couple things. Like, it stands to reason that they should really explore and try to make better use of that tech, but also, on the other hand, the way that B'Elanna treats him, the Doctor, in the beginning, like, the Doctor still isn't being respected. It's been 4.5 years, or 4 years plus, guys. I mean, like, it really is impactful on his freedom, him not having that mobile emitter, and he's a person too. And, like, he literally pleads for his freedom. He's like, what? He basically says, what are a few more seconds? What are a few more seconds of unconsciousness? My freedom's at stake. Yeah, now that's like an ethical thing, right? Your unconsciousness is far less important than my freedom. And it's true. Like, he's making an actual ethical argument there.
I think waking up someone in the morning is not professional behavior. And then, like, trying to talk to them while they're in the shower, this isn't professional behavior. So the Doctor's kind of petulant. He's also, I think his personality is based on someone who's not very socially well-adjusted. So we know that. Yeah. So
speaking of sonic showers, what the hell was it even doing? I mean, like...
Yeah, that's a bit more of the male gaze that Voyager is relying on more and more. We got to see B'Elanna's back.
Yeah, I mean, there was... Actually, I think most of the writing staff was men at this point. And it's the 90s. You still have male gaze.
And ratings were declining.
Yeah, ratings were declining.
Yeah.
I think here's something we haven't said about Voyager yet. The opening sequence is beautiful, and it's like mid-90s leisurely in the music and then the speed. So the speed is really, the music's really good. I really like the music too.
I'm always looking forward to the intro when I watch these.
Yes, it includes the ship flying through space, which was your main gripe with Discovery's intro.
Yeah.
It did have a ship flying through space. It was just this weird construction document space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think. Well, it's funny because I like the opening sequence for all of them, even Discovery's. I just, I guess I've seen them so many times that I fast forward through almost universally these days.
I see. I always watch them. They're always the high point for me.
This one, of every episode, it's the high point of the whole thing.
Well, that's overstating the case, but it's a treat.
So yeah, well, as we come to our close, what did you guys think? Just overall, 1 out of 10.
I'd say 8 out of 10, bearing in mind that that's pretty good.
I'd give it a
Tyler?
1 out of 1.
That was terrifying, Tyler. I was like, what planet did you come from? But yeah, I was less impressed watching it this time than I was last week when I took the notes. But that's because I've seen it 7 times now. So I gave it a 10 out of 10 when I took the notes. I mean, it's everything you want from Star Trek, philosophically, ethically, culturally, politically in a like implicit sense, and scientifically interesting exploration of what it means to be human and compassion and being thoughtful and how we deal with things and other species. Actually, so I'm really glad this is how the episode ended up because there was a writer involved with it named Harry Clore, and he pitched what we used to call, to quote Joe Manowski, Terminator drone. It was going to be an unstoppable killer drone. We didn't go that route. We decided to go softer, character-oriented. Let's see. Drone is Brandon Braga says, Drone is one of my favorite episodes. It was a classic Star Trek episode because, oh man, my phone just messed up. Because only 7 of 9 could bring that tear to your eye. Because she didn't fully understand her own emotions and was experiencing grief for the first time. You felt it as though for the first time. And when 7 gets into this is Brandon Braga now, when 7 gets into the role of mentor the same way Janeway has been her mentor and gets to experience the loss of her child, that's what makes the episode very successful. So yeah.
It was very emotionally successful.
Yeah.
Hands down, yeah.
And it also, like, the pacing, the character, the acting, the theme, and the music, they're really good. Finally, my last note, anyone should be free to join the collective, even though it might be unethical to do so. Yeah. Like, anyone just in general in the Star Trek universe, I think should be free to join the collective. Yeah.
I find it funny that there aren't more people that just come forward and be like, you know what? I'd like to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I know resistance will be futile, but exactly. I understand resistance will be futile, so I'm freely giving myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, on that note, guys, I think we're done. Drone, great episode. Lots of fun. Next week we're going to do The Force Awakens, which, yeah, for those of you who thought this would be your favorite, those of you who thought this would be your favorite Star Trek podcast, please don't feel betrayed.
We only cover sci-fi whose titles start with ST.
That's right.
No, that's only true of every sci-fi that we've covered so far.
And that's why we're not going to do Black Mirror.
Unless we find a version whose title in what language actually starts with an S and a T, and we'll find that loophole and do it so that we can all be depressed together.
Yeah, I'm opting out of that. In the Walking Dead sense of opting out. I'm going to go opt out. All right. Thank you guys for listening. We're looking forward to The Force Awakens next week and The Last Jedi the week after. We'll probably do a birthday podcast for me right after watching the movie in IMAX 3D a week after it comes out, but still close enough to the time for me to be happy. So, yeah. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks for listening.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Have a good night.